Story 1. When they make a point to mention how half the people involved agree with the original poster and the other half disagree, every single time they think it adds realism to include more characters. They enter an area or walk near a group at the exact right time to hear secret information. Story 2. They keep adding to their plight as the story goes on. My boyfriend and I live together in my apartment. We've been together for 11 years. I'm 9 months pregnant, working full-time and studying for the bar exam, while he sits at home playing video games and doesn't even clean. We also have 2 kids, and he has another from a previous relationship. The mother is a drug addict, so I take care of them on top of everything else. This morning, I asked my boyfriend to rinse his plate before he put it in the dishwasher, and he reacted angrily, saying I'm being controlling and don't want him to be happy. Am I the antagonist? All our friends and family agree with him. Even my mom said I was being toxic, but I can't tell because I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and am drained from rescuing dogs all day. Are they right? Am I the antagonist? Story 3. Unrealistic timeframes. All this happened last week, and we've already been to court. Now I've been evicted. Story 4. Sometimes, the story has a hidden layer of an unusual obsession. I'm not sure if I'm explaining it clearly, so I'm thinking of an example. The only one that comes to mind is about a father finding used tampons in his daughter's wardrobe, which resembled a shrine for Lightning McQueen. Story 5. Dialogue that feels awkward and unrealistic, as the author anticipates potential criticisms and adds unnecessary details as a rebuttal. Story 6. Maybe, just maybe, appears frequently in many artificial intelligence stories. Another common issue is the inclusion of excessive details as the author attempts to elaborate on the world they have created. Story 7. General fakeness. Updates too fast. No, you did not go from catching someone cheating to finalizing a divorce in under a week. AI fakery. Good spelling and grammar in the posts, but poor spelling and grammar in the comments. Story 8. When people say things, said my wife. Sure. I remembered every line of dialogue in this story that happened 6 years ago. I replied. Story 9. Are you asking these questions so you know how to fix your artificial intelligence posts accordingly the next time you post on Am I the Asshole? Story 10. Any story where someone discusses how they have been wronged and seeks validation or sympathy from others is compelling. It is even more engaging if the story includes a villain possessing traits that are widely disliked, who antagonizes the original poster for no obvious reason. Story 11. They clarify they are giving everyone fake names. An update states that fake name found my post. Another update says, Hi, fake name here. Let me tell you the real story. I have never met another person in real life who actively uses Reddit for anything other than specific Google searches. I doubt that your girlfriend's dog sitter's cousin's maid of honor's dad found your post and showed it to them, leading to their response. Story 12. At this point, I will shrug off most things because reality is wild. I have several stories that sound unbelievable. Story 13. Using softer phrases like, ended my life instead of suicide, or ended the pregnancy instead of had an abortion, may increase the likelihood of going viral on platforms like YouTube or TikTok. Story 14. I'm surprised that twins haven't been mentioned yet. There are so many twin issues. I immediately discount or skip the post if there's a mention of twins. There really aren't that many twins in the world that they would all be on Reddit. Story 15. The legal process frustrates me every time. People are arrested, tried, and convicted within weeks. It is incredibly unrealistic. A story I read recently depicted someone who found a lawyer, scheduled an appointment, drafted divorce papers, and served them all within a few days. Story 16. If the main point of the story is that people really love stray dogs and dislike it when those dogs are rescued. Seriously though, a few points. The main point of the story is acknowledge what an angel I am. When the main point is this person is evil incarnate and I'm unsure if they are evil. Let me tell you how incredibly evil they are. When the main point of the story or post addresses a contentious political agenda topic. My son is transgender and ate 13 babies. Am I allowed to dislike them now? When the story makes no sense and there is an obvious solution, prompting people to respond with anger. When anything is posted by a brand new account, you can view it with skepticism. When the original poster has another post with similar or contradictory content elsewhere. When dialogue is unnatural. For example, women do not refer to themselves as females in everyday conversation. This is not how people speak. When the post is a rehashing of a story that may have already taken place. Usually, a quick internet search will help with that. When details are overly specific when they do not need to be, or vague when they obviously require specificity. Some areas are much more prone to these issues than others, such as relationship advice, am I the asshole, am I the idiot, and similar variants. If you're in those spaces or similar versions of that kind of content, you should approach everything with caution. If you want help noticing fake posts, start following Am I the Angel? Because people will point out the obvious fakes and flaws in stories there. Story 17. If it takes on the tone of a person from junior high who always talked about his attractive girlfriend from Canada, whom no one had met and who had never visited him due to very strict parents not allowing incoming phone calls. Story 18. New account, bizarre, controversial, sexual, scandalous story with too many details. It reads like a high school creative writing piece. The author starts by clarifying ages and informs readers that they are using fake names for everyone. Story 19. It's just a wall of text, as a child is typing his thoughts while developing the story in his mind. There are excessive details and conversations that lack realism, featuring responses that never occur in real life. Story 20. If it is too neat and clear-cut, real life has weirdness, curveballs, and people doing foolish things for silly reasons. Story 21. If the owner has cameras inside their house in places that would be ineffective for security or safety purposes, it could conveniently prove that a friend or family member's entitled child or new significant other, who has negative vibes, did something inappropriate. Story 22. Dialogue that includes direct quotes is often strangely detailed, sometimes even with dialogue tags, as if the author is writing characters in a story because they are. Most people do not remember conversations well enough to recall exact dialogue, nor are they perceptive and all-knowing enough to ascribe proper dialogue tags. Some people will attempt to get the general idea, but that is rarely very detailed. Actually, recounting events is much messier when not heavily revised or edited as one would do for a short story or book. This is not how most people casually tell stories, especially on a platform like Reddit. While it is not to say it never happens, the majority of stories written in that style on social media are likely to be fake or at the very least exaggerated to some degree. Story 23. When they mention my country, without specifying which country they are referring to, it can be an attempt to counteract statements that don't make sense. By not naming a specific country, individuals from that location cannot challenge them. Story 24. That aunt who has been ostracized by the family forever possesses all the information that could have improved the original poster's life 10 years ago. Everyone in the family is contacting someone about a trivial disagreement between a sister and brother, as if anyone actually cares. Family members make a social media post, while the original poster does nothing in response. Twins. Why is the bad guy always named Mia? Why does there always seem to be an inheritance issue? How many people steal their sibling's spouse, and why do the parents support it? Additionally, there is an endless stream of unnecessary details that contribute nothing to the story, as if the writer believes the reader will want to know them. No, we do not want to know why you had to come into work early because Jennifer from accounting could not make it in, only to never hear about Jennifer again. Story 25. When typing on a phone or laptop directly in the browser text box, all hyphens will be typed out as dash. However, when you ask ChatGPT to write a story for you, you receive M dashes instead. These do not appear when typing in a normal text entry field, only when the text has been formatted to look nice, which you are unlikely to do when writing a post on Reddit asking if you are the asshole or not. Try it. Ask ChatGPT to write something for you and keep an eye out for the S. Story 26. I love that we are unknowingly training artificial intelligence because AI bots post all the time, and many get called out for being fake. We, as humans, are explaining to them why they need to adjust. The next 5 years are going to be incredible. Story 27. If the first person's story lacks author culpability, does not involve ADHD or other psychiatric medication, does not claim autism, and does not mention a cat, it is likely fabricated. Story 28. When the story feels crafted for maximum shock value instead of being a genuine account, it features excessively detailed drama, wildly implausible twists, or recycled tropes that resemble a script for a low-budget movie rather than real life. Every sentence seems designed to provoke a gasp instead of offering real substance. Story 29. Mom is on the other person's side while dad stays neutral, never the other way around. There is mention of autism and Asperger's syndrome. Either I am unaware that apparently 90% of the population has been diagnosed with these, or some of the stories are fabricated. Story 30. If someone tells a story and then out of nowhere starts to write everything the characters in their story say as dialogue, it's obviously fake. For example, my phone blew up. When I answered, Jimmy Bob John told me, "Guy, where are you? Are you all right?" "Yeah, my phone died. So I didn't know you were calling me." Story 31. Am I in the wrong for wanting to leave my boyfriend who gave me 2 black eyes, broke 2 of my ribs, and threw me down the stairs because I bought the wrong brand of peanut butter? My family and friends are divided on this. Some say I need to leave him, while others suggest I should pay more attention while grocery shopping. Story 32. I haven't seen anyone mention phrases like burst into tears or smiled brightly. It always strikes me as insincere when phrases that include an adjective before or after an action appear. Just say they were happy or that they cried. I did not come here for a creative writing project. Story 33. Unnecessarily hyperrealistic descriptions and complex vocabulary that people do not typically use when recounting an experience give the impression of being written by artificial intelligence or a novelist rather than an everyday person. It resembles a story where everyone clapped. I came across a story about a freelance developer interviewing for a company where he claimed to have solved one of their major bugs that even the top developers could not fix. Most companies will not share their source code with outsiders. And even if they do, it is under strict non-disclosure agreements. The narrative often concludes with a cliched statement, such as having been married for 50 years with 5 children and 10 dogs in a large house. For a site predominantly used by college-aged white males, there seemed to be an unusual number of older individuals present. Story 34. When their writing is exceptional, it seems as though they are trying to craft a novel by setting the scene in a way that resembles a Rembrandt painting. Some people are natural storytellers, but it can come across as disingenuous. Story 35. Stories where they are offered ways to fix issues with cylinders but do not seem to want to take the advice make me suspicious. Story 36. Like individuals who tend to lie in real life, they will overemphasize unnecessary details, as if trying to convince you that what they are writing is true. The tone of their post will also sound dramatic, perhaps overly dramatic. The post reads more like a story than an account of something happening to someone. Story 37. The 4th or 5th update often eliminates a character, typically through self-inflicted means. They run out of ideas and conclude the story with a death. I have seen this so many times that I just roll my eyes and give it a C, even if the initial installments had a B+ quality. Story 38. Whenever someone uses "you know" in their story, I immediately assume the story lacks credibility. This belief is based on no evidence and is an unreliable way to establish authenticity. Story 39. Divorces and court proceedings generally happen in weeks, not years. Abandoning parents surrender parental rights of middle schoolers and teens with a simple statement and do not have courts pursuing them for child support and possible child abandonment charges. Updates seem to take inspiration from comments in earlier posts. Story 40. Using complex language that people do not commonly use in everyday conversation, exaggerated writing, varied posters with similar writing styles and plots, overly sensational characters, twins, and so on. Story 41. When stories are trendy, an initial post receives recognition, awards, and comments, prompting similar stories to appear. These similar stories often seem insincere. I also find certain text exchanges unbelievable. I recall a conversation where the original poster claimed her husband complimented a woman's appearance. The alleged message read something like, "Wow, your figure is impressive," along with a remark about wanting to touch. Story 42. When the story is about a bad spouse and the individual is considering divorce, they post an update a few weeks later claiming that the entire divorce process has taken place since their last post. Story 43. I saw him go red and then pale. He bit his lip, and it sounded like bad fiction in general, usually with too many details that I associate with mediocre fan fiction, like, I got dressed that morning in ripped jeans and my red Converse. Story 44. Honestly, I don't care if a personal story is fake or not. I fail to see the consequences. I treat it like entertainment. Was it well written? Was it engaging? Did I enjoy it? That's enough for me. Story 45. A good AI indicator is that all paragraphs have the same number of lines. Fake relationships that involve children often feature twins. Story 46. They are too perfect. Instead of relatable real-world events and natural dialogue, the narratives are filled with fictional storytelling tropes. When legal cases are involved, they are often portrayed inaccurately, with unrealistic timeframes and justice system professionals handling matters that do not fall within their responsibilities, such as police officers acting as lawyers. Story 47. When the villain of the story is comically evil and does everything wrong, while the protagonist is a perfect angel who never makes a single mistake, real life is much messier than that. Story 48. Quite often, the original poster will be the only person that is vaguely sensible. Every other character in the story will have no redeeming features, with levels of idiocy that defy common sense. A typical example is when a sibling wants free babysitting or to live in a house they didn't pay for. They cannot fathom why they are being told no. This classic rage bait. Story 49. If the writing and grammar style is strong and they use a lot of imagery, it typically indicates they are a writer. Story 50. I assume nearly all of them are, especially the ones that involve a satisfying moment against the bully, bad boss, or unfaithful spouse. Life doesn't work like that. Story 51. I want to tell you a story that I never thought would happen to me. While driving back from term break, I came across 3 beautiful college students needing a ride. They wanted more than just a ride, if you know what I mean. Story 52. It all came to a head at my birthday meal. He invited his colleague, and she made several comments. I finally snapped and expressed my feelings, but now everyone says I was dramatic and ruined the meal. Story 53. Too many unnecessary details and people siding with the indefensible side. I was walking with my friend, whom I've known since kindergarten. She has red hair, and her dad is a firefighter. I don't know what her mom does, but she has a degree in advanced physics. Then a car came out of nowhere and ran her over. The driver was drunk and legally blind. I yelled at the driver for that, and everyone on the street got angry at me, saying I'm a horrible person for yelling at a blind person. Am I the wrong one? I was just really upset. Story 54. I feel like no one actually says, fast forward to, when recounting their stories, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Story 55. If it is posted by a username that follows the pattern adjective noun dash hashtag 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 hashtag, such as fit, pair, 1338, then disregard the content. Story 56. Title: Understanding the motivations behind questionable actions. If they include the phrase, let me explain or hear me out, and if the first paragraph and title have directly opposing meanings, such as a claim that personal actions have harmful consequences, when in reality, they may have beneficial explanations, it raises questions. Please share your thoughts on why individuals engage in such behavior, as I would consider doing so if there is a meaningful purpose behind it. Story 57. I am convinced that most submissions on our /outoffthloop are designed for artificial intelligence training and not posted by real people or in good faith. Story 58. The standard petty revenge stories always conclude with a smug, well, they won't be going anywhere fast because of what I did. They often read like a bizarre daydream. Story 59. I don't know if this means it's fake, but it definitely means it is at least not accurate. So I calmly explained to them, Story 60 Twins. The fabricated stories often feature many twins. As a lawyer, I find that these stories misinterpret the law tremendously. This issue arose today, so I contacted a lawyer, and we are going to court tomorrow. The writers of these false narratives seem to believe that lawsuits are real. Story 61. And then their friends and family weigh in on the situation. This format is a clear indication that it was generated by artificial intelligence. Story 62. I love the supposedly true creepy story forums, and it's probably best to assume they are all fake or heavily exaggerated. However, those that have too much of a narrative arc or are too obvious stand out as inauthentic. True creepy stories are strange and typically leave more questions than resolutions. Story 63. They come up with unusual scenarios to explain why they have first-hand knowledge of conversations between others. Story 64. Here is the real pro tip. Stop caring. If it's a news story or something that actually affects your life, that's one thing. But if you're scrolling and read a relationship advice thread or something similar, treat it as it is. Entertainment. Put as much thought into it as you do reality television. Story 65. If you are reading it and their writing is so flowery and descriptive that it sounds like fan fiction, it is probably fan fiction. Story 66. Bad liars use too much specific detail. Good liars tell the truth but leave out important details, making them liars by omission. Story 67. Because family helps family. My phone started blowing up. I walked in on my boyfriend with my daughter, and he killed us both. Now I'm alive again, and he says I'm gaslighting him by coming back to life. Story 68. The first clue is that the story is posted to platforms like Am I the Asshole? Or similar subreddits. It mainly involves creative writing and attention-seeking behavior. The saddest part is the sheer number of people who comment on these posts. I wish Reddit would shut these communities down, but they attract the most views, unfortunately. It concerns me that younger generations believe these fabricated stories. Story 69. Post history contains only that topic or related topics. The subject could be a sexual fetish. It seems as though they are intentionally trying to provoke or distress people. Story 70. There are too many minor details that do not contribute to the main story. Dishonest individuals often add numerous small details because they believe it enhances credibility. Story 71. I used to be one way, but now I'm the complete opposite. They will begin by sharing their experiences in the Ukrainian army up until last year, but now they are disillusioned. Then they will provide extensive narratives filled with Kremlin talking points. Story 72. I cannot be bothered, and I do not care if it is real or fake since I am usually here to be entertained. As far as I am concerned, it is all real and people just have ridiculous lives. Story 73. The infamous Jenny story from years ago is like every fake Reddit story cliché rolled into one. It is baffling that there were people who thought it was real. Story 74. When the antagonist in the story refers to themselves using a term that is exclusively used by their opposition, or when that individual declares their political allegiance, it is somewhat reminiscent of the Jussie case. Story 75. If there is ever a will reading, those do not happen anymore. They were popular in the past because people could not read. Every beneficiary should receive a copy of the will, so claims that the will is being withheld by someone are untrue. Regarding military matters, people can receive dishonorable discharges for serious offenses. Dishonorable discharges are associated with individuals who have committed federal crimes such as murder. Story 76. When an individual alternates between past and present tense during a story, it may indicate that they are creating the narrative spontaneously. Story 77. Large updates are coming too fast. The original post requested relationship advice, and 2 days later, there was a follow-up post stating that they are looking for divorce lawyers. Another follow-up, 2 days after the first, announced details of the divorce. Story 78. My personal list. 1. Unrealistic timelines. I filed for divorce last week, and today it was finalized. Events that are too significant not to have been reported. The unfortunate truth is that there is no reliable way to determine what is real or not. Story 79. An initial post about their marriage expressed uncertainty about what to do. Then, an update 3 months later stated that the divorce was finalized. Story 80. The details do not make sense, similar to a waiter complaining about customers never giving tips in a country where tipping culture does not exist. Story 81. There are a couple of types of fake stories on Reddit: liars, creative writers, and perverts. Some people are simply unbelievable, while others are overly wordy and ridiculous. Additionally, some seem to be baiting for inappropriate material. The Am I the Asshole and relationship sections are largely filled with creative writers. They would have you believe that Reddit is mostly populated by damsels in distress from other countries who speak perfect English as a second language. The remainder of Reddit consists of liars and perverts. Story 82. When their story receives enough attention to warrant a sequel, it can lead to unexpected developments. For example, a few years ago, a woman made a comment about an encounter with a stranger while hiking. Essentially, it was a cautionary tale about being a lone woman in the wilderness of America. Due to the positive response, she followed it up with, "Oh, this other thing that happened." The new story turned out to be even more extraordinary than the first. Eventually, she claimed that discussing these experiences helped her remember repressed memories, and like a popular film franchise, she went from minor troubles to dramatic adventures involving rockets. Story 83. Extremely specific conversation details, sometimes word for word, mentioning that they saw their story on TikTok or another social media platform. Story 84. Flying monkeys who attack others are not believed by anyone in their lives. No one seems to care about their side of the story, yet they are all invested enough to attack them relentlessly. Story 85. I have 4 golden rules for Reddit stories that help tip me off when more than one issue is present. Why is this moving so fast? The initial situation to going to court in 2 months seems unrealistic. Have you ever dealt with the legal system? Even the best ones aren't that quick. Where are you? Any story that mentions, "I'm not in the United States, so that doesn't apply," or "I need to stay anonymous, or will be recognized," suggests you don't want us to fact-check you. Why are you here? Surely you have more pressing issues to deal with than posting updates on Reddit. Why aren't you busy calling the police, lawyers, child protective services, or whatever else is necessary? Why is everyone here? Why does every person in this story have a Reddit account to respond to the original poster? Story 86. I couldn't read any more Tooks Chromosomes stories. It's not the only subreddit with a lot of fake anger, but it's really bad. Story 87. A person mentioned in the post miraculously finds it by the time the original poster updates. Alternatively, they appear in the comments section. The original poster has someone else take over to tell part of the story, but then this new person types exactly the same. Story 88. Anytime they mention their financial situation, they say, "We do well for ourselves. We each make 6 figures." Story 89. I do not know anyone who uses M-dashes casually in normal online conversation. However, artificial intelligence text generators use them frequently, which is always a red flag for me. Story 90. One of the flying monkey side characters lobbying for the main character to do something absurd will justify it with the phrase, "Family is family." Story 91. In addition to the usual red flags in the stories, the poster either does not respond to comments or only responds to a couple of them, but their responses are always vague, cryptic, and ignore the actual questions being asked. Alternatively, they provide random responses with no context, making things more confusing. They claim to want advice, but after taking the time to write a detailed post, they suddenly do not respond to further questions with any clarity. Story 92. There is a punchline near the end of the story that is perfectly applicable and funny, indicating that it was likely developed first and the story was built around it. Story 93. They have a friend who is a lawyer and takes on their large case pro bono. At 3 a.m., when a crisis occurs, he advises them or prepares a long legal document. The next day, they go to court and win. Story 94. Some variation of "family helps family." It's always the same phrase. At least change the prompt. Please. Story 95. Arguments with family or a significant other lead to the original poster being called ungrateful. Every other story on Am I the Asshole or Am I the Idiot features the original poster being labeled as ungrateful. Story 96. So, last weekend my dad was on my side, but my mom said I should apologize. My family is divided. Am I in the wrong for this? Story 97. Mostly if they have too much detail to the point where it shifts from believably true to creative writing at best. Story 98. Their story does not align or possess any logical consistency. Here is an example. A while back, there was a thread on a forum from someone who claimed to be a lottery winner. Most of his answers seemed pretty normal, but one detail was off. He claimed that he won mid-eight figures several years ago, but a few observant individuals attempted to find the date and winning jackpot amount he mentioned, and none of it matched. That was the first red flag. The second red flag was his assertion that he used Microsoft Excel to generate his lottery numbers, which is unnecessary because in United States lotteries, you can request quick picks, where a computer randomly generates numbers. Why would someone go through the extra effort of generating numbers when they can simply ask for a quick pick at a local convenience store? Another red flag arose when the same person told a rather far-fetched story about how he used a stun device on someone who attempted to rob him, which felt like pure fiction, reminiscent of a James Patterson novel. Story 99. A perfect or unrealistic story where the protagonist is always right. Everyone else is completely wrong. Where things work out perfectly without complications may indicate fabrication. Story 100. They focus on online rage, primarily directed towards entitled parents, usually mothers, and entitled siblings, usually sisters. The emphasis is often on weddings, often featuring a difficult bride or a sister, friend, or mother-in-law trying to disrupt the event. A small proportion of the stories involve revelations about boyfriends who are actually abusive. The fabricated stories reflect the user base. 80% express anger towards women with demands and needs, while 20% demonstrate fear of men being sneaky, predatory, and violent. Story 101. When everyone starts clapping at the end, it feels surreal. Having been on Reddit for 8 years, I have never seen this happen in real life, yet it occurs in every fictional revenge story. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.